Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, a teacher with the Demon, and with me is Nathan Fox, one of the founders with LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Nate, our email today is from Julian with the question of flaw question struggle.
Hi, Josh and Nathan. I'm reaching out with a concern in my ability to successfully answer flaw questions. I've been studying for the LSAT for almost a year now and have improved from a 137 diagnostic to a 168. Okay. Solid.
That's phenomenal.
Flaws, however, are by far my most missed question type, and I just can't seem to improve on them. I have no issues whatsoever finding the flaw / what's wrong in the argument for every single flaw question I do. I then put that anticipation into a well-formed, well-thought-out sentence to describe the flaw. I'm not getting these questions right because I crumble when I get to the answer choices. I always consider the 3 types of answer choices when evaluating them. What? Okay, so there are neglecting answers, there are assuming answers, and there are describing answers. And Julian's got all these in trump case, so he's referring to them as if they're proper nouns, like actual things. This is not something that we teach in the Demon. I've never talked about categorizing different types of flaws that way. I mean, there are very common flaws that say you've neglected to consider X. There are very common flaws that are you've assumed something is true. Usually those say takes for granted that. But those are both the next category of describing answers. Yeah. What the fuck are you talking about? That's every correct answer on a flaw question is a describing answer. I mean, the record is closed on flaw questions. You're looking for an answer that fairly describes a flaw the argument made. Also, every argument does the same flaw every time. You fail to prove your conclusion. Sometimes you left something out. Sometimes you assumed something is true. Sometimes you neglected to consider some possibility. But it's always the same. You presented some evidence. Your conclusion is not warranted by the evidence. One answer is going to correctly describe that using a variety of different language. I feel like this is complete horseshit. This idea that you're gonna you're gonna categorize. I don't know where you learned that, what book that was from, or what class that was from. I don't see that being helpful at all.
I especially think he talks about making this prediction, and is like identifying what the flaw is. But then he goes, and I think what that must mean is that he's putting it into a bucket. Like, okay, this is the flaw. I think it must be a describing flaw, and then evaluates answer choices first and foremost. Oh, does this sound like a description flaw? And you've separated yourself into what we think is an arbitrary and not correct categorization. But number 2 is you've separated yourself from the facts of the argument and the actual thing that you read and should have understood. And so I think this extra step is the reason that if Julian really is struggling with flaw questions more than anything else, that this categorization is the culprit.
Oh, the stupidity of these buckets. I mean, because look, I'll just make a shitty argument, okay? Mr. X is rich. The polo matches are in town tomorrow. Therefore, Mr. X is going to go to the polo matches. Okay?
Yeah.
Well, that argument has, neglected the possibility that sometimes rich people don't go to the polo matches. That argument has also assumed that if you're rich, you're going to go to the polo matches.
Yep.
And it's also correct to say that either one of those are a correct description of the flaw in the argument, which is just because you're rich doesn't mean you have to go to the polo matches. It just doesn't prove that you have to go to the polo matches. So I don't see how, if the same actual flaw could be put into any of these 3 buckets, then what's the point of the buckets?
Yeah.
Anyway, should I continue with Jake's email?
Let's finish the email real quick.
All right. Jake says, again, he said, I have no problem understanding these in concept, but I struggle in practice, particularly with describing answers. I mean, but that could be because the concepts don't have any application to
Right,
real
right.
life.
Yes, yes. Agreed.
You can understand bogus theory. Like I understand the theory perfectly well. Oh, it's
Hmm.
just that the theory doesn't match up with actual questions that I'm being asked.
Right.
Anyway, Jake says, I often find that I'm trying to convince myself that an answer choice can fit into a scenario that matches my anticipation. Oh, so you're trying to make the
Hmm.
answers right instead of realizing that every answer is wrong 4 times as often as it's right.
Hmm. Yep.
Your job isn't to try to shoehorn answers in. Your job is to look for reasons why the answers are wrong. You should read A going, did they do this? Is it a problem that they did it?
Hmm.
Half the time they didn't even do it.
Right,
Next.
right. I think that's such. And honestly, when I first read, whenever I read, someone says to me, "Hey, I struggle with flaw questions." I don't want to overgeneralize because the number one problem they have is that they just didn't read closely enough. But a very common problem I see is they treat them like weakeners. And they go,
Right.
"Oh, well, that's a dumb argument because the rich people are at the Formula One race." And it's like, okay, hold on, right? That is sure that would weaken it, but we are looking for a closed question that
Yeah.
then that first question you asked, Nate, I love. Did the author actually do this?
Yeah.
And if the
Now, of
answer is
course,
no, you just have to move on.
yeah, but if now, of course, in that scenario, if the answer said neglects to consider the possibility that rich people might be going to Formula One instead,
Sure.
then yeah, they did neglect that possibility, and that possibility would cause them a big problem. So you could pick an answer like that, even though it's a closed record question. But it's just, does this answer fairly describe the argument? And again, the bar is really low for neglects to consider the possibility that
Right.
it's just like, well, you probably neglected this possibility, whatever this possibility is. Just is it a problem that you neglected that possibility?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Anyway, Jake continues, my anticipation is always right, but the answer choice I pick very frequently doesn't end up matching what I've anticipated, even though I'm convinced it does. I have to push back a little bit on this idea that Jake always has a clearly articulate, well formed, well thought out sentence that describes the flaw. Because I don't know, Josh, do you always have a well formed, well thought out, anticipatory
No, I don't.
sentence to describe the flaw? I mean,
No.
most of the time, I mean, not most of the time, but unless it's like a very common flaw, confusing sufficient for necessary,
Mm-hmm.
confusing correlation for causation, some of those real common flaws, unless that's the case, more often I'm just like, I don't know, your evidence is over here, your conclusion's over there. Like, how does this evidence prove this conclusion?
Yeah, I might say rich doesn't equal polo, right? But is that neglecting other possibilities? Is that assuming that rich, right? Right. Like from
Yeah.
there, I don't know exactly what that answer choice is going to be
Yeah.
to a T.
Jake goes on, I have half the battle with flaws mastered, but I simply cannot win because I struggle to find what is wrong with the argument in the answer choices. Given this struggle, do you have any suggestions as to how I can improve? Yeah. You need to expect each answer to be wrong instead of trying to make it right. Stop getting so caught up on this idea that you have perfect predictions. And even if you do have a perfect prediction, that doesn't justify you picking a wrong answer.
Mhm.
I mean, when you miss one of these questions, Jake, you're both misdescribing the argument, picking a wrong answer that's just flat out saying something that they either didn't do or they did do, but it's not a problem that they did it. I mean, that captures 100% of wrong answers on a flaw question.
Mm-hmm.
They either didn't do it or sure, they did it. It just doesn't matter that they did it. The so
And
so
ditch the
there,
buckets.
I mean, and that's just one of the errors that you're making
Yeah.
by picking a wrong answer, because you're also failing to pick the right answer. One of those answers does actually describe something that the argument did wrong. They did it, and it's a problem that they did it. So
This is the last thing I think, because Jake, you've gone from a 137 to a 168.
that's awesome.
That's amazing. My hope, my presumption, if you're emailing in right now, is that at least on some of the other question types, you have followed the demon method, which is read the argument, understand what you were reading, make objections to it, be adversarial with it, and then be adversarial with those answer choices. You need to just quit thinking about flaw questions as being this unique formula that has these buckets that you handle differently. Put that aside, understand what you're reading, really understand those answer choices before you pick them, and be willing to eliminate at a moment's notice when they very clearly are not doing something that the author actually did.
Totally. I think that your problem, Jake, is probably not actually just related to flaw questions. I think it's more generally related to biting off a little more than you could chew, not really reading as well as you thought you read. This idea that I'm always making a perfect prediction and there's always an answer that I think describes my perfect prediction, but it actually doesn't. That's just not possible.
And Nate, I guess this is the last thing I'd add to this usage of predictions. How often do you eliminate all 5 in a section?
Far more often than I have 2 contenders. Narrowing it down to a 50-50 is not as good as students think it is. And I mean, I just taught today, earlier today. And it's funny because you can tell the people that are really struggling because they're like, well, I thought it was A, but then also B, but then D too caught my eye. And it's like, oh boy, you're doing it wrong. This isn't go into Costco and just shop and buy everything. This is you need to go in with this presumption. I'm not buying anything.
Yeah.
Unless it sells itself to me. It has to really be the right thing. I'm not just, this isn't like supermarket sweep or whatever. I'm just dumping everything into the cart.
Yeah.
That's a better analogy.
When a student says, oh, well, I never eliminate all 5. That says
that's a problem. Yeah,
that's a problem. That says you are not reading answer choices the right way. So that would be the question I asked to Jake. Yeah. Are you just eliminating all 5? And
I really want to know. My last thing, I really want to know where this neglecting, assuming, describing thing came from. And I mean, hey, you're telling me you're struggling on flaw questions. I'm telling you, I've never heard that part before, and it sounds like complete horseshit to me and to Josh. So. Maybe step 1 is to just let go of that because I don't see
I'd be
how
curious
that's
to know where you hear it.
Yeah.
Feel free to email back, Jake. Email us back and let us know where you heard this because I'm curious.
Yeah. Email us back daily at lsatdemon.com. And anybody out there, you can email us daily at lsatdemon.com if you'd like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.